Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier audio lectures, we discussed about some of the basic concepts of the head of income salaries, the definition of salaries under section 17.1 and the charging section 15, and also some of the terminologies which might be used in this chapter. We have discussed about them. Today let us continue the same discussion in relation to certain specific items which we might encounter in this chapter, and we should be well versed in addressing those items before we reach there. So let us continue the overall understanding of this chapter once again, and also some of the specific items to be known before we enter into the actual provisions related to any of the three categories: allowances, perquisites, or retirement benefits. In general, this entire chapter is contained, in other words, the head of income is contained, not the chapter actually. The head of income contained in three sections: section 15, 16 and 17, that's all. All the provisions related to the salaries in relation to their taxability are contained in only three sections. Looks very small, only three sections: 15, 16, 17. But actually it is not. Why is that? We already know. Because we are going to have many exemptions in this chapter which are contained in section 10. So those will play a crucial role. And not only that, as far as the valuation of perquisites is concerned, that is contained in the rules, income tax rules, rather than income tax act. That is why we cannot find that also in these three sections. Though the definitions are contained in section 17, that is definition of salary 17.1, definition of perquisites 17.2, definition of profits in lieu of salary 17.3. That is about the definitions part which are contained in section 17. Whereas the deductions are contained in section 16. One of them we know. Actually, other than this, there are only two more deductions. One of that is standard deduction. There are other two deductions also, like entertainment allowance and profession tax. We will come to them later while we discuss those provisions. But one deduction we already know, that is standard deduction of maximum 50,000 rupees under section 16.1a. And the chargeability of this chapter itself, that is called charging section, that itself is contained in section 15, as we already discussed. And that section says very clearly, salary due is also taxable, salary paid is also taxable, though it is not due, arrears of salary is also taxable. In other words, in a nutshell, salaries is taxable either on due basis or on receipt basis, whichever is earlier. That is section 15. But there are some other points to be noted in addition to what we already know. So this employer-employee relationship definitely we have discussed, and we have done some of the examples also in that relation. So yes, we should have an idea about employer-employee relationship. The existence of such employer-employee relationship only will attract the head of salaries. And some examples are given here. So you can just go through them. There is nothing special to explain. In the ICA material, there are some examples which are given related to the employer-employee relationship. Like, for example, if an actress called Sujata is employed in the Chopra films, where she is paid a monthly remuneration of 2 lakhs rupees, and she acts in various films produced by different producers. The remuneration for acting in such films is directly paid to Chopra films by different producers, which means Chopra films has employed Sujata. Is there employer-employee relationship between the Chopra films and Sujata? Answer is yes. So can we call this 2 lakhs rupees as salary? Yes. Because there is an employer-employee relationship. What if, in the same example, if Sujata acts in various films and gets fees from different producers, in that case, she is not employed, but she is doing her profession as an actress. So it's a simple thing to identify if any such case-based questions are given, whether there is an employer-employee relationship is existing or not. Same way, When it comes to directors, that also we have discussed. For example, a director receives a commission from a company. Normally, if it is a salary, normally if he is an employee of the company, definitely it is a salary. However, if he is not an employee of the company, then that commission cannot be charged as salary, but it will be charged as business income or income from other sources, depending upon the facts. Once again, we don't have to break our heads about PGBP or income from other sources. There will be definitely one of them which will get attracted. Whether it is a salary or not is our focus point here. Is it a salary? Yes, if director is an employee. If not, then it is not a salary. For example, just for understanding purposes, there will be some directors who are called as part-time directors, some directors who are also called as sometimes non-executive directors, who are generally not part of the regular board meetings, but they will be outsiders who will just attend the meetings and go. But for them, we cannot call them as employees. Usually, highly educated people or highly accomplished people will be sitting on the boards of many companies. It is common practice throughout the world. So, those directors cannot be called as employees. Then, if at all any director receives some kind of commission from the company where he is not an employee, then definitely it cannot be taxed under the head of salaries. It will be taxed under another head depending upon the facts of the case. Like this. Any example can be given. These are only just for illustrative purposes. Any such case-based question comes, we should be able to identify that facts of the case and identify whether such income is taxable under the head of salaries or not. What about the partner? That already we have discussed. For example, partner receiving a salary, bonus, commission, remuneration by whatever name, it cannot be regarded as salary. It will be regarded as PGBP. Why is that also we discussed? Because we cannot say there is an employer-employee relationship between partner and the partnership firm. That is actually the firm is collectively what it is called as a combination of partners only. It is nothing separate. So that is why, in essence, we cannot say partnership firm and partner have employer-employee relationship. But whatever the reasons they are, very clearly it is given in the act also that the salary, bonus, commission, etc. earned by a partner from the partnership firm is taxable, but not under the head of salaries, but under the head of PGBP. That's what we already discussed. Nothing new there. The next point also we already discussed, full-time or part-time. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. One employer or more than one employer, it doesn't matter. All of them will be taxable under the head of salaries, irrespective of whether the employment is full-time or part-time, irrespective of whether employee is working with only one employer or multiple employers. That also we already discussed. There is one more concept which was given as a case-based question earlier also. That is called foregoing of salary. So what is this foregoing of salary? Foregoing means just sacrificing, we can say. For example, if an employee tells his employer that a portion of his salary may directly be transferred by employer to some charitable trust. So let us say the salary of employee is 50,000, and according to the instruction of the employer actually gives him only 45,000, whereas the remaining 5,000 he gives to a charitable trust on the instruction of employee. If it happens, what is that? There you have to remember the earlier discussion that we already had earlier. That is two aspects. One is diversion of income. Second one is application of income. So this one will fall under which category? This one will fall under the application of income category. That's what is foregoing of salary. Means salary is first earned by the employee, then subsequently it is waived or it has been given to someone else. Then it is as good as just an application of income. That means the foregoing of salary will not have any special impact. It will be normally chargeable to tax. So once again you have to be clear. We should not be too much focused on the amount that is received only. we should be focusing on the amount that is earned by the employee. In our example, 50,000 is what he has earned. Maybe he received only 45,000. That doesn't matter. So that 5,000 whatever he has foregone also is part of his salary. Hence, that also shall be chargeable to tax. That's it. That is called foregoing of salary. So what is the essence here? Foregoing of salary is taxable. It does not exclude the employee from tax liability. That is because it is nothing but an application of income. That is an application of income, and we know that very well. Application of income is always taxable. Surrender is different, whereas diversion of income is different. So diversion of income, if at all that is diverted before even if it is accrued to the SSC, then it is called diversion of income. That will not be taxable in the hands of the SSC, but this is not the case. Here in the case of foregoing of salary, that is a application of income but not a diversion of income. That's what we have to be clear about. Look at an example here, a case-based question or situation. Mr. A is an employee and he instructs his employer that he is not interested in receiving the salary for the month of April, and the same might be donated to a charitable institution, similar to what example we have got. Like recently also, some of the employees, mostly the state government, central government employees, have donated some part to PM CARES fund, let us say. So 1 day salary, 5 days salary, like that lot of organizations have donated crores and crores of rupees to PM CARES fund, which has been created recently for the purpose of basically tackling the coronavirus related activities. So the contribution, whatever is done by those people, they have donated. Basically, what is that? Basically, that is an application of income only. They might not have received the salary full. Let us say if an employee has instructed the employer, give 5 days salary to PM CARES fund, he will receive the salary related to, say, only 25 days. If that is the case, how much is taxable? Is it the full month salary or only the 25 days salary? Definitely the full month salary will be taxable, because that is called as application of income. So same example happened, same thing happened here also. The employee Mr. A has asked the employer that he doesn't want to receive the salary for the month of April 2019 and asked him to donate this money to a charitable institution. So can Mr. A say that this amount, whatever the amount may be, for the month of April is not taxable? Can he say that? No. He cannot say that. He cannot claim that he cannot be charged to tax. It is chargeable to tax. This is foregoing of salary and it is application of income. Hence, it will be taxable in the hands of Mr. A. That's it. First of all, it is taxable. So naturally, the conclusion is the salary for the month of April will be taxable in the hands of Mr. A. It is definitely taxable in the hands of Mr. A. Maybe if at all there is any deduction available under section 80, that depends. Every charitable institution might not be eligible for that. Of course, our PM CARES fund is eligible for that, but not necessarily every charitable institution. So if at all any deduction is there, that can be claimed later, and we know that already deductions under section 80 are altogether different. When they will be given? They will be given after computation of gross total income. What we are talking about here, prima facie, whether that amount is taxable under the head of salaries or not. So this is a much earlier stage. Is it taxable? Answer is yes. Is it deductible? We don't know. That depends upon whether it is eligible under section 80 or not. That becomes a latter step, and that latter step of giving section 80 deductions will be only coming after computation of gross total income, which is after calculating the each head of income, how much income the SC has earned. After aggregating all of that, only the gross total income will arise. From that, the deductions will be given. So always you have to keep in mind which stage we are talking about. Effect is ultimately same. Now I will do whatever the way I want. No, you cannot do that. It is not only the effect, it is not only the final answer that matters here. That is what we have to keep in mind. That is why always we have to be alert about the wordings, usage of those words in particular context. Exemption, if we say, that means we are talking about section 10. That's what we are saying. Deduction, if we say, which deduction we have to ask? Which deduction? Is it a deduction within the head of income? For example, in salaries, we have a deduction under section 16. 3 deductions are there, that's all. That deduction is different, that is within the head of income. Like that, many deductions will be there in other heads of incomes also, but that deduction is different. After giving these deductions only, the heads of incomes are computed. After computing all of them and adding them only, you got gross total income. Then you give another deduction of section 80 if applicable. That is a much later step, so we don't have to worry about that now. If at all, in this example, this charitable institution is eligible for any such deduction, yes, it can be given also later under section 80G or whatever it may be. So that is about foregoing of salary, which is simply taxable. There is one more concept called surrender of salary. Of course, there is a special act for it. We don't need to remember the name of that. But it is legally exempt. When it is already legally exempt, definitely it is exempt. We have an act itself for that. So what is that? So that act says the surrender of salary is exempt. Surrender to not anybody else. I will surrender my salary to my neighbor. I will surrender my salary to my relatives. No. Surrender means it will be surrendered to the central government. That too under some section 2, whatever is that, we don't care, of Voluntary Surrender of Salaries Exemption from Taxation Act 1961. There is some act like that. So which means what? Simply, since there is a legal provision which exempts it, definitely it will be exempt. Of course, only if the salary is surrendered to central government. So already some people are getting thoughts. Sir, what about PM CARES? Is it also eligible for this? We don't care. That is none of our business. If tomorrow the government wants PM CARES also to be included in that Voluntary Surrender of Salaries Exemption from Taxation Act, they can do that by ordinance anytime. So that is their prerogative. If they add it, it will be exempted. If they don't add it, it will not be exempted. It will be only eligible for some section 80 deduction later. So we don't have to be interested in the details of each of those, you can say, charitable funds. We don't need that. What we have to be interested in the taxation impact of that. Taxation impact of that is what? If the salary is surrendered according to that particular act, then it is exempt. Simple. That's what is. Surrender of salary and foregoing of salary, both are not same. Foregoing of salary is taxable. Surrender of salary, if under that particular act it is surrendered, then it is exempt. Again I am repeating, it is not any surrender. It is only a very particular exemption given with a particular act. That only is exempt. So how do we know it is under that act? If it is given in the question, then only we know. Otherwise, how would we know? We cannot know anything without the facts being given in the question. So don't worry about it. If the question says, oh, there has been a surrender of salary according to blah 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 act, name itself indicates there is exemption, so exempt it. And such situations generally will not arise. Even if they arise also, they are very clear from the name themselves. So that is about foregoing and surrender of salary. Then there may be a situation where salary paid tax free, he may tell in the question somewhere, or any special question can be given, there is a salary that is paid tax free. This already we discussed earlier also in the basic concepts. There is no income which is tax free. First of all, that tax free itself is a myth. There is nothing like that. Tax free salary, tax free income. No, there is nothing like that. But what should we do in such cases? We know that since the amount of tax is already paid by the payer, that should be added to the income of the payee, and accordingly the tax has to be calculated. Means what? The employer is bearing the burden of tax on the salary of the employee. So that's what when we say it is paid tax free, it is not actually tax free. It is only meaning that employer is bearing the burden of tax. When employer is bearing the burden of tax, is employer giving a benefit to employee? Of course, yes. When employer gives a benefit to employee, that is a perquisite? Of course, yes. So it should be taxable? Yes. So what should we do? The tax paid by employer on behalf of employee also should be taxable. That means it should be also included in the total income of the employee. Let us take an example there for better understanding. Let us say X receives a salary of 30 lakhs rupees and his employer paid a tax of 7 lakhs 41,000 rupees, whatever it may be. And what is the actual tax payable by X? That is the question. So if at all X is receiving a salary of 30 lakhs rupees, if X is receiving a salary of 30 lakhs rupees and he is receiving also a benefit of 7 lakh 41,000 rupees. He is receiving a benefit of 7 lakh 41,000 rupees also. Why is that benefit? Because that is a tax which is supposed to be paid by X, but rather it is paid by his employer. So that also is taxable. So what is the total taxable income of Mr. X now? That will be 37 lakhs 41,000. What will be the tax payable if 37 lakh 41,000 is your total income? Of course, we may say that we have to give a deduction of 50,000 under salaries. Yes, it can be given because the word used is here received. So here so 30 lakhs is the salary, 7 lakh 41,000 is the tax paid by employer on behalf of employee, that is also taxable. So that also is included in the income of X minus 50,000. Let us take separately otherwise. So minus 50,000 is finally the taxable amount of salary in the hands of Mr. X. So what is the tax liability on 36 lakhs 91,000? You do that separately. You can do that separately. 36 lakhs 91,000. What will be the tax liability? So first of all, 36 lakhs 91,000 minus 10 lakhs. Whatever that amount may be, whatever is exceeding 10 lakhs, how much is the tax rate on that? That is 30%. Then a normal person, we have to add 1,12,500 for all the incomes that he has earned before the original amount of income. So these two things together will make his tax liability. So what is going to be the tax liability of X? Normally 9,19,800 rupees. So 36 lakhs 91,000 minus 10 lakhs into 30%, we know that, plus 1,12,500, 9,19,800. Add the health and education cess. No surcharge here because the income did not exceed 50 lakhs. So health and education cess is how much? 4%. So if you take this as 1.04 after adding it, after adding that amount, so what is the final tax liability? 9,56,592, and we can round it to 9,56,590. That is the final tax liability of the SSE. So 9,56,590 we can say is the final answer. But finally, how much is the tax payable by X? Understand the difference. This is salary received by him. This is perquisite as a facility. X received this benefit. What is the benefit? His tax liability his employer has paid. So that is a perquisite. That is also taxable. So his gross salary is 37 lakhs 41,000. After deduction of 50,000 under section 16(1)(a), his taxable salary is 36 lakhs 91,000. Tax on that is 9,19,800. After adding cess, it would be 9,56,590. But that is a tax liability of X. Question is not tax liability of X. Question is tax payable by X. How much he has to pay? 9,56,590. Okay, but already his employer has paid 7,41,000, right? That is on behalf of X only, right? So how much actually the X has to pay? So final answer here for this question would be 2,15,590. That's what is tax-free salary. But is that really tax-free salary, 30 lakhs? No. even though employer has paid the tax liability of 7,41,000 on behalf of X, it will reduce from the final tax liability of X only, but initially it will be included in his income because it is a perquisite, because it is a facility given by the employer to the employee. That will be included in the income of the SSC, and accordingly the tax has to be calculated normally. But at the end, when the final payment to be done by Mr. X, he can definitely reduce whatever the tax has already paid on his behalf by his employer. So final tax liability of, or tax payable, we can say, tax liability of X is 9,56,590. You cannot transfer the liability to anybody else. This is a direct tax. But tax payable by X is different. That is 2,15,590 only. That is called tax-free salary. If at all there is something like that, we should be understanding the overall provision related to that. Simply add the tax payable paid by employer also to the total income of the SSC, then recalculate the tax liability of the SSC, then finally deduct whatever the tax has been paid by employer on behalf of employee. That is tax-free salary treatment. But read the question carefully. Don't always mechanically do the same procedure what I told you. This procedure is for that question. This question was asking what is tax payable by X. If the question asks what is the tax liability of X, then if you seriously give 2,15,590 as answer, that is wrong. That is not the tax liability of X. The tax liability of X would be 9,56,590. So understand the difference between them very carefully. That is the another basic concept related to salaries that just now we discussed. Then place of accrual of salary, that is, does it matter? We know that already in the residential status. We know that if at all the services are rendered in India, even though the salary is paid outside India, definitely it will be taxable, right? For example, if at all an employee is paid pension outside India, pension is paid outside India, abroad, but when the original services were rendered in India, where they were rendered, let us say if they were rendered in India while he was in service, then definitely that will be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Similarly, leave salary also, if at all it is paid abroad, but if it is related to the leave earned in India, that is also deemed to accrue or arise in India. We know all this already in the residential status and tax incidence chapter. Same thing will have to be applied here. So otherwise, place of accrual of salary generally does not matter. It only matters depending upon where the accrual actually has happened, where the income has already been earned. Always the simple logic, where the services are rendered, that matters. If they are rendered in India, that is deemed to accrue or arise in India always. Whether it is received in India, outside India, that doesn't matter. Whether it is salary, whether it is pension, whether it is leave salary, all those things do not matter. All of them will be taxable in India if those are all received in relation to a service that is rendered in India. That's it. That is about place of accrual. There is an example that is given. Just go through that simply. A is a citizen of India, posted in the United States, ambassador, and he renders his services outside India and receives salary also outside India, and is non-resident. So what is this here? We know this already. Whether he can claim exemption in respect of his salary paid by the government in India? No. Exemption is there for 10(7). Exemption is there for only allowances and perquisites, not for basic salary. So definitely the salary is payable by government to a citizen of India for the services rendered outside India shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Hence that is taxable. He cannot say it is exempt. However, allowances and perquisites paid to the same person will be exempt under section 10(7). This also already we know, nothing new here. The same thing has been once again given as an example. That's it. That is about some of the basic aspects of this chapter, salaries. And section 15 already we have discussed. That is related to whether the salary is received or earned. Any one of them is enough. Whichever is earlier is the taxable event. So salaries is taxable either on due basis or on receipt basis. So because of that, advance salary is also taxable. Because of that, arrears of salary also taxable on receipt basis. That's it. So some examples are given here. Similar things what we discussed yesterday. If A draws his salary in advance, so here it is advance salary. A is drawing the salary in advance for the month of April 2020 in the month of March itself. So when it will be taxable is the question. Of course, it will be taxable in March itself because it is taxable on receipt basis. So it will be treated as income of previous year 2019-20. That means assessment year 2021. However, the salary of assessment year 21-22 will not include the income of April 2020 because it is already taxed. This also we discussed. Once it is already taxed on receipt basis, it cannot be taxed again on due basis. Same way, once it is taxed on due basis, it cannot be taxed again on receipt basis. So only once it can be taxed, either on due basis or on receipt basis, whichever is earlier. That's it. Same way, another example is given. For example, if the salary which is due in the March, which was due in the March 2020 is received by a later in the month of April, still it is taxable as income of the previous year 1920 only, though it is not received. Why? Because it was due. Though it is not received, it is enough. It would be taxable for the previous year 1920 or assessment year 2021 on due basis. And of course, obviously, for the next year, that is assessment year 21-22, the salary of March 2020 will not be included because it has already been taxed on due basis. So the essence is very simple. Application, of course, has to be looked at according to the case that is given to us. To sum it up once again, salary is taxable on either due basis or on receipt basis, but not both. Whichever is earlier is the taxable event. That's it. That is about section 15. We can say that is charging section. Advance salary is also an extension of the same thing. Advance salary is also taxable. That's it. Because whether due or not, definitely advance salary is going to be taxable. Sometimes there may be a relief that is given to that. We can come to that later. But another important question here sometimes is this: the difference between advance salary and advance against salary. So this was asked as a question earlier in the examinations. Distinguish between advance salary and advance against salary. Advance salary is different. Advance salary is a salary related to future received in advance. Advance against salary means loan. Advance against salary means employer is giving a loan to the employee against the salary of the employee. In other words, he will give loan now, employer will give loan now, and he will cut from the future salary of the employee. Like that, the employer is giving loan. So the advance against salary is a loan. It is not salary. It is not taxable because loan is not an income naturally. So when there is a loan, definitely it is not taxable. So what is loan in these two? Advance salary or advance against salary? That is advance against salary, which is treated as loan. So that cannot be taxed because it is not income. First of all, loan cannot be treated as an income. So because it is repayable anyway in future, that cannot be treated as salaries. That cannot be taxable at all. Anywhere it cannot be taxable because it is a loan. So simple answer for this question is advance salary is taxable. Advance against salary is not taxable since it is in the form of a loan. That's it. That is advance salary and advance against salary. Now arrears of salary already we have discussed. What is the arrears of salary? Generally what happens is old dues will be now cleared by the government particularly. The example you can just go through that, similar one what we discussed yesterday. Pay commission appointed by central government and recommends the revision of salaries of employees, and arrears will be now received but related to past period. Maybe sometimes retrospectively 2-3 years also they will revise. All those arrears will be received now. They will be taxable now definitely, and arrears will be taxable on receipt basis. Why is that? Because it was not possible on due basis. Earlier it was not possible. We didn't know that there will be arrears. Now we know that there are some money that is received that will be taxable on receipt basis. That is about arrears of salary. So arrears of salary, advance of salary, advance against salary, all are different. And basis of charge, of course we know. Surrender of salary is different, foregoing of salary is different, place of accrual matters, but from a residential status point of view, tax free salary, nothing like that. basically whatever the tax that is paid by employer on behalf of employee is also taxable, and all the other points like basic things we have already discussed. Employer-employee relationship, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. So these are definitely some of the basic aspects we should know before entering into the real provisions of this chapter. Of course, we need to have definitions of section 17, in which already we discussed section 17(1). This one already we have discussed about it. So that is basically the definition of salary. That's what is given in section 17(1). All of them will be considered as salary. That's it. We don't need explanation for everything. Wages, what is wages and all that. We don't need. Wages is wages. That's all. And allowances and all, how to make them taxable, we will come to that when we reach to the segment of allowances. Then we will discuss about it. However, we need to definitely look at one more concept, though it is not directly there in the ICA material. We need to be definitely discussing one more concept, that is called pay scale or graded scale. Sometimes the questions will be framed like this, and we should be able to find out how much is going to be the taxable salary of a particular person according to this graded pay scale or graded scale, you can say. So that is also called as pay scale or graded scale. Look at the example, then you can understand how to read this question and what is graded pay scale first of all. Miss R joined P Limited on 1st September 2014 on a pay scale like this. Read it. 32,000 dash, 4,000 dash, 40,000 dash, 5,000 dash, 50,000 dash, 9,000 dash, 68,000. Definitely looks very cumbersome. What nonsense is that? It's not that complex if we understand what it is. What does it mean? Here, the pay scale of this person is this, which means this 32,000 is her monthly salary when she joined, and here it is monthly. Pay scale generally is always given monthly, and in the questions we have to be very careful whether the details given are monthly or annual. Whenever we say salary, normally it is given monthly, but for income tax purposes we need annually, right? So that is where the main calculation is important here. For us, the previous year is a period of 12 months. So definitely we need to calculate the total taxable salary for the entire year. But in the entire year, she might not have received the same basic. So this is a computation of basic actually. Pay scale is given for basic computation. So that basic can be computed like this. Before computation, we need to understand this first of all. What does this mean? 32,000 per month was her salary. That was her salary when she joined. Like that, how much time she will get the same salary for a year? Then what is this 4,000? It is the increment which happens after each year of service, but that increment is to the monthly salary. In other words, in the year when she has joined on 1st of September 2014, 1st of September 2014 she has joined, till that date to 31st August 2015, that constitutes an year, right? That year, 1st September 2014 to 31st August 2015, how much salary she would have received monthly? Monthly she would have received only 32,000. That would have been her monthly salary when between this period, 1st September 2014 to 31st August 2015. Then what would have happened? Then 1st September 2015 will come to 31st August 2016. Next year, how much monthly salary she would have got? Because she got already an increment of how much? That is this 4,000 what we are talking about. So this 4,000 is the increment in her monthly salary, which happens after each year of service. So first year definitely she will receive 32,000 only. First year of service is 1st September 2014 to 31st August 2015. She would have received 32,000. Naturally, next how much she will receive? 36,000. Same way, because 4,000 increment is there after that. Then next year, like this, you can just continue. On paper, you can do this normally, but I'm just going to continue easily. So these are the different years she would have served, and how the salary would change, that is important to be noted also. So let us look at this. So 14 to 15, 32,000, then it became 36,000, then naturally it will become 40,000. 40,000 story changes. Why? Look at the scale. What is happening? Once it reaches 40,000, the increment in the next year is not going to be 4,000, it is going to be 5,000. So next year it will be 45,000. Next year it will be 50,000, another 5,000 increment. But once the salary reaches to 50,000, then the increment is going to be 9,000. So next year this is going to be 59,000. Till when? Till it reaches 68,000. But we have not reached that. By far we are okay. She will continue the service. She will get it till next year. We are not bothered about that. Future we are not bothered at all. So that is her salary, monthly salary in all these years. But what is the problem here? This is only for our understanding. We don't need to do it all the time on paper. For practice we are doing it now. Later you should be able to do this in the brain itself without putting pen on paper. But that comes later. Don't try it directly. With practice you can do that later. So these many years she has served already, and she has earned these salaries all these years. We don't care about actually all the remaining years. What is our requirement? What we want? We want what income she has earned between 1st April 2019 to 31st March 2020. That is our previous year, right? We are bothered about that only. 1st April 2019 to 31st March 2020. That is our core concentration. Remaining things we don't need, we don't care. But her monthly salary is not same throughout these 12 months. That is the point. Now simply remember, how much would have been her monthly salary between 1st April 2019 to 31st August 2019, because her salary was 50,000 till 31st August 2019. Till 31st August her salary was 50,000 per month. So here we can split this year into two parts. This is all I am telling you to just understand simply now. But you cannot do all this much time you cannot take later. So simply we can split this period into two parts. What are those? Say 1st April 2019 to 31st August 2019, that is one period. Then 1st September 2019 to 31st March 2020, that is another period. So this is the same period. Between April to March there is a April to August one period, September to March another period. So that's all we need. We need to know how many months it is. April, May, June, July, August, which means 5 months this is, and September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Naturally it should be 7 months, total 12 months of course. So what is going to be the salary for her taxable here now? 5 into 50,000, because that was the applicable salary in that period. Then 7 into 59,000. So the total salary for her that would be taxable is 6,63,000. Of course, standard deduction will be there. When we say taxable salary, always we have to understand we are talking about standard deduction also to be given. So standard deduction if you give from this, what is going to be the final taxable salary? That is 6,13,000. Finally, that is the taxable salary of her for the assessment year 2021. So this is standard deduction, always will be there. We have to remember that, we cannot forget that, but we should not waste our time on that. Every time it will be there. What is the big discussion on that? What is important here is to compute this. How to compute this? First of all, our previous year we have to split into two parts. There cannot be more than two parts ever, not possible at all. And after splitting into two parts correctly, and how do we do that? That we have to do depending upon what is her salary according to her date of joining. Date of joining matters here. Date of joining was September 1st. So salary will be always incremented on 31st August. So 1st September to 31st August is her employment year. For us, the assessment year, previous year are not that. For us, previous year is April to March. We need to convert whatever the details available to the details what we need. We need 1st April to 31st August 2019. That is 5 months where she was getting a monthly salary of 50,000. And prior to this what, 1st April 2019, we don't care. That also was there. In 2019 also it was there. But that doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is the period between 1st April 2019 to 31st August 2019. 5 months. Monthly 50,000. So 2,50,000. Same way. 1st September 2019 to 31st March 2020. That is 7 months. Monthly 59,000. Total 4,13,000. What about April to August 2020? We don't care. That is beyond our previous year. Our previous year only we are interested in. So our interest is only this period. This period is our core interest. Every time, irrespective of the question, always our target is this. It has to be this. And accordingly, we have to calculate the basic salary. Of course, if any details are there in the question, we will be adding them. And standard deduction, of course, has to be given always. That is about the application of graded pay scale. So now how to read this pay scale? She will join at a monthly salary of 32,000 and after 1 year she gets an increment of 4,000. Again after 1 more year she will get another increment of 4,000. Then her salary reaches 40,000. Then after 1 year she will get 5,000 increment. After 1 year she will get one more 5,000 increment. Then the salary reaches 50,000. After that she will get an increment of 9,000 rupees after 1 year. And another year of another 9,000. Then her salary reaches 68,000. That is what we have to read it like. Understand like. Not like read fully like this. Understand this. So 4,000, 5,000, 9,000. What are all those in this? These are all increments. 4,000, this 5,000, this 9,000. These are increments. 32,000 is the basic salary started with. Then it increases to 36, 40, then 45, 50, 59. Then next it will go to 68 also. But we are not bothered about it because our period is already covered. So that is how graded pay scale has to be converted into our requirement, and very important aspect here. This is very important. Why? Because if we do wrong here, entire problem can go wrong. Means, once again, very crucial calculation. This calculation may not give you more than 1 mark. If you do this also, this entire things you cannot put it on paper. It takes a lot of time. You should be practicing more so that you can directly come to this part. What is the time period directly? This period is what we want. Of course, in this case, it is April to August and September to March. In some other case, it will be something else. So this time period you have to reach directly, and straight away you should be able to split the 12 months into 2 parts and accordingly calculate what is the salary in the previous year. So practice will bring you little bit more ease in the calculations later. But in the problems, if you do this, 1 mark will be there only for working note. But remember this, if you do this wrong by mistake, sir, just a small mistake happened and this amount is wrong, that will have an impact on the entire problem. Because lot of things we will see that in future are going to be dependent upon basic. He will give DA is 10% of basic. He will not give amount. Means if you calculated basic wrong, DA also will go wrong. If basic and DA gone wrong, all provisions will go wrong. HRA exemption will go wrong. All the other calculations also will go wrong. So that is why very crucial. You may think that this is a small mistake, but no. This one graded pay scale we cannot afford any mistake. It has to be perfect, because this may not give you additional marks too much. Only 1 mark maximum it can give you, but it can take away 10 marks from you. See the risk that it carries. It gives you only 1 mark if you do it correctly, but if you do it wrong by mistake, it can take away 10 marks from you. So that is the importance of this. So downside risk is very high. That is the reason everybody has to be very much perfect with the calculations of graded pay scale. So let us do one more question similar to this. Let us say this guy Q joined some company T Limited on 1st July 2012 in the pay scale of this. And how to read this? 3,000 originally, then 400 monthly increment, then reaches to 4,600, then 500 increment, then increment of 1,000 reaches to 12,600. Let us see how many years it would be. So always you have to be careful with the starting year. When he joined, that we have to be clear. 1st July 2012 he has joined. So naturally for his service year will be what? For him, service year will be naturally 1st July 2012, 2002, any year starts from 1st July, ends naturally on 30th June of the next year, say 2013. That is his service year, we can say. Always it will be like that only. When he joined on 1st June, his service year is going to be always 1st July to 30th June. So that is his service year. Then after that, so many years will be definitely passing by. So let us take this separately. Up to 2019, definitely we need that. So here also so this is going to be the service years for him all these years, 1st July to 30th June, right? So that is his service year, and main thing here is to find out what is going to be his monthly salary. For that we can just do it one by one for understanding purposes. Later you have to do this quickly. So first year when he joined in 2012, from 1st July 2012 to 30th June 2013, how much monthly salary he would have received? Monthly would have been 3,000. Okay, fine, you know that. So when this is 3,000, all the others also we can find out. So next it will be 3,400, then it will be 3,800, then it will be 4,200, we know that, 4,600 later. Once it reaches 4,600, then the increment is 500 rupees on the monthly salary. So 5,100, then it becomes 5,600, then it becomes 6,100, 500 increment later on. This is enough for us. Afterwards what happens, we don't care. So in our scenario, in our particular previous year, how many months are there? We have to just find that out. So from 1st April 2019 to 30th June, April, May, June. So 3 months, how much you would have received? 5,600 rupees. Then remaining naturally will be 9 months. That is what, which period? From July 2019 to 31st March 2020. July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 9 months it will be. So 3 months, how much you would have received is 5,600. 9 months, how much you would have received is 6,100. And what is going to be the total here? 71,700. That is going to be the salary computation. Of course, this standard deduction and all, don't worry about it. This is important for us. Finding out his basic salary taxable is important for us. So 71,700 is the answer for this question. Like this, many number of questions can be solved. I will give them as an assignment to you, and you practice this graded pay scale very well. Understand the meaning of the sentence clearly, then find out according to the number of months how much will be the actual salary or basic for the SSC during the assessment year. Okay, so with that we can conclude today's session, and we can continue the discussion of actual provisions related to the salaries in the next session. Till then, take care, bye bye, thank you very much.